I imagine some of the stuff that you'll learn that first time through with your fitness business, you're looking at this business like these are signs that I'm heading in the wrong direction. Like how are you making sure you don't go down that path again?
Well, okay. So one of the most important things that I'm working on and have been for the last year is how you deal with the folks that are working with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it will shock you to learn that as a leader, I spend a lot of time, certainly in my past, just believing that the folks that are working for me understand what I want to happen next.
You're
Despite the fact that I haven't communicated it,
They
right?
can
So,
all read your mind, right? Like that's what we
yeah,
expect as
exactly.
business owners. I'm Julie B, and they don't teach this in business school. Hey there, I'm Julie B, and you're listening to They Don't Teach This in Business School, a podcast where we discuss business ownership lessons that are learned through experience, not in a classroom or seminar. Today's episode is going to be a really good one because I have got Randy Holland, the managing partner of Urban Equities, here with me today, and he's got some really valuable business ownership lessons that I believe need to be heard. And I'm really excited to get into the conversation with him. So, Randy, first of all, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here, and I'm really excited about our conversation.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Absolutely. So let's just start it off with tell us about Urban Equities. Tell us about what you all do and just give us some detail on that so we know who we're talking to.
Yeah, so Urban Equities, we own and improve apartment communities. We're currently own properties in three states: Texas, Alabama, and Tennessee. We have hopes of growing that to Georgia and Florida as time goes on, but that's sort of our niche, as you would say. And we love properties that are, we classify them as B and C properties. They're basically properties that are, you know, well maintained, but a little old, from 85 to 2008 vintage. And when
Mm-hmm.
we come in with the hope,
2000 is now considered vintage. Okay, like let's
you
just
know,
mark that as a note. So sorry.
23 years, man.
I know.
It's almost
I
54 years
know.
old. It's incredible. So don't, yeah, I've got socks older than that. So,
Yeah,
you
so
know,
I didn't go ahead. I did not mean to interrupt you, but that's funny to me.
that's all right. I feel the same way. But anyway, we go in there and we basically are looking for properties that need an update of finishes. And we do heavy renovations on the units and improve the properties both inside and out. I mean, they're generally property. The more tired the property was or is when we get our hands on it, sort of the better because we have the opportunity to improve both the units themselves and the community where folks live. So
Yeah.
we're kind of passionate about that. And I specifically said that we own and improve, not own and operate. We really do. We have a 3 to 5 year hold window, and our customers really are our investors.
Mm-hmm.
Raise money from individuals, and we provide a really, really excellent return that includes tax benefits and also cash flow over that horizon. So that's our urban equities.
Got it. Okay. So now I want to rewind a little bit on your business background, and I know that you had a business before this, and you've got an
Sure, yeah.
interesting story in there. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about that part of your entrepreneurial journey, and then we'll dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah, you bet. So I was trained in multifamily and commercial real estate as a broker in Southern California, a firm called Marcus and Millichap. Many folks who are in that space would completely recognize that name. Great firm. I spent 9 years there. Uh, and when we left, it was just after the savings and loan uh, debacle.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was at a point where I needed to do something else. Not much more to say about that other than I was worn slick. And so I went to a business that for me was my passion at the time. I was into fitness and I opened a personal training gym in Nashville that became 4 stores over a 14-year period. And it was it was it was fabulous, especially at first. I mean, we opened it in 1998 and stayed with it till 2012 when we sold it. Um, Sold it to Vanderbilt. But the truth is, Julie, by 2010, I was so sick of it.
Yeah.
Why was I sick of it? Well, I had 55 employees. That's a start. Very tough to maintain, operational integrity and fun over that many folks. Not that it can't be done, but I wasn't particularly well skilled at it. And as you might remember, that was the Great Recession was 2008, and
Hmm.
folks were still getting over it. Now we happened to be placed in good communities and markets. We were in 4 stores, like I said, and they all were affluent areas. And we were lucky. We were
Hmm.
kind of the last. We were kind of the last thing that people started to give up for among their discretionary expenditures. So we were lucky, but we did see our personal training revenue fall from about $125,000 per store per month to less than $50,000 per store per month.
How many jobs did that translate into? Because I figured that was very painful.
Very painful. Well, you mean jobs lost?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably 25, certainly
Mm,
2 dozen to 30.
mm.
And that's really, those are families, right? And we kind of walked our way through this, and now the company is much worse off. We had leased spaces, so we didn't own the real estate that we were in. So that meant we're not going to benefit from it. At the end of the day, we made a deal with a the largest local employer who took the spaces over with the hopes of converting them into corporate wellness spaces. That held for about a year, and then they actually even gave up on it and turned it all into office space.
Mm.
What was also happening at that time was there was this very, very large migration away from large gyms and personal training where you pay for it by the hour to this model like Orange Theory and hot yoga and all these ways where you can engage in fitness in a group setting for a fixed monthly fee. And it's much more competitively priced. More people can participate. And it was a superior model, at least from our perspective. And once we got out, we were so glad that we did.
Yeah.
No foul over the 15 years. I mean, put our kids through private school and did some in college and was wonderful for all that. But boy, were we glad to get out of it
So you
at the
got
end.
out in 2014, correct? That was when you got out of
That's
it.
right. That's right.
Leading up to that, how long do you think you were? Well, one, were you burned out? And how long do you think you were burned out leading up to that point?
Well, we were burned out by 2009 probably, but really worn slick by 2010 because, like I said, we were kind of the last guys to get punished by discretionary spending changes among our customers, but we were, and by that when that happened, everything went to a different
Yeah.
place, and it was all about survival rather than flourishing. And so when you're involved in the process of trying to change people's fitness for the good, and yet you're losing yourself in the battle, it's just a really hard thing to reconcile
Yeah.
in your heart, your mind. And I didn't do it very well. I mean, I was miserable.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped being a good leader. I stopped being a good vision caster. All those things.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I want to, I mean, the fact that you were burned out for, somewhere between 4 to 5 years there was that's a long time to
Yeah, it
to
is.
to be burned out, one. But the thing that I am really interested in is how did, obviously other than the job losses and that a lot of that you had no control over because of what was going on in the economy, but how did your burnout impact your teams, your employees? Did you see that impact them?
Yes,
Yeah.
very definitely. Um, like I said, I became despondent somewhat
Mm-hmm.
over the hopelessness that seemed to be the future. Um, we had our rent was $26,000 a month at one store, the
Mm-hmm.
most expensive place. And I'll never forget that. I mean, it's
Mm.
insane.
Yeah, that's a
And,
lot.
and yet, and members are quitting every day, turning in their notice, not because they necessarily don't like the place. They just, my husband said I have to cut off. And so, you live with that.
Yeah.
But because you become despondent, obviously you don't have anything to give.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a very fat, they say that bankruptcy, thank God we didn't have to do bankruptcy, but
Mm-hmm.
it felt like it because I've always heard the message about bankruptcy is that it happens gradually and then suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the truth. Things fall apart, and then you look around and you see that a a period, a year of despondency creates maybe irretrievable hope
Mm.
among all the people that have been relying on you, especially if you're a leader
Yeah.
that in the past has been a vision caster, which I was. And so you attract that person who wants to be led.
Yeah.
And so when you stop leading, everybody becomes, there's even, anger is a part
Mm-hmm.
of it. And feeling, I know people that were heads of departments for us that felt cheated out of my inability to lead them.
Hey, this is Julie B, and you're listening to They Don't Teach This in Business School. I'm here today with Randy Holland, the managing partner of Urban Equities, and he just got very vulnerable and shared a story about his first business and the burnout journey that he went on that ultimately led to him exiting and selling that business. So, Randy, I have to ask you, we're gonna turn the corner here and get into the positive stuff now.
Okay.
Well, and my opinion is burnout always teaches us something, and I'm sure it's going to be told in this part of the story. So, but my question is, so you have that experience, right? Basically you go through hell. I mean, it's really bad, really awful.
Right.
There are worse
Right.
things, but it feels like the worst thing at the time. And then you decide to start another business at some point. So when did you start Urban Equities again?
Yeah. So 2018. So 4 years
So
kind of passed
you took
between,
okay.
beginning one, but still ending one and starting another one. And I lived as a consultant. I'm lucky to I have a Vanderbilt MBA, so I was pretty employable on a management consulting level, and
Mm-hmm.
I did that for 4 years. And lucky me, that was great, but it was certainly not fulfilling. And there was a constant calling to go back to that thing that I knew I was particularly gifted
Mm-hmm.
at, which was commercial real estate and
Yeah.
understanding properties. So
And I
that's
think
what we
there's a
did.
really important point there for entrepreneurs and business owners listening. Business ownership sometimes isn't just a straight line of quit your day job, become a business owner, and then you're always a business owner. Sometimes you go back and forth. Sometimes you're a consultant. Sometimes sometimes you do two things at once. But I think that that's an important point
Yeah.
because you needed that. You probably needed that time of, I just need some time to
Well, I didn't know what
do
I was going
something
to
that
do.
do something somebody else is telling me to do, basically.
Well, imagine, I mean, I was
Mm-hmm.
53 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know what I was going to do the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's what takes a minute is figuring out what do you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
You got maybe, you're going to start your fourth quarter here pretty soon, and it's going to matter what you do. So it's huge, and it took me forever.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I really wish I'd started early, gotten into this a little sooner, but because right now, obviously, it's very difficult in the commercial real estate space with
Mm-hmm.
capital markets as they are. But
Sure.
we're obviously learning a lot of cool things about ourselves and in general about management and other forces that are out there. And
Mm-hmm.
if we weren't in it, we wouldn't be learning. So
Yeah.
thank God we have the opportunity to go through this now.
Yeah. So how are you making sure that you don't have a similar, I imagine some of the stuff that you'll learn that first time through with your fitness business, you're looking at this business like these are signs that I'm heading in the wrong direction. Like how are you making sure you don't go down that path again?
Well, okay. So one of the most important things that I'm working on and have been for the last year is how you deal with the folks that are working with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it will shock you to learn that as a leader, I spend a lot of time, certainly in my past, just believing that the folks that are working for me understand what I want to happen next.
You're
Despite the fact that I haven't communicated it,
They
right?
can
So,
all read your mind, right? Like that's what we
yeah,
expect as
exactly.
business owners.
Yeah, and if they don't, then I'm going to punish them by even distancing myself further from them. To punish
Yeah.
is just unbelievable what we do, at least me. And so I've been working on. It's really a strategy that I have to keep right in front of me almost on a daily basis to
Mm-hmm.
review because I call it agreements. It's a strategy to framework all of your activities that you want to have happen over the course of, let's say, a year. You got to decide who's going to be in charge of those tasks, and then you're going to go to that person and we're going to establish an agreement, and we need to get all the components of the agreement agreed to. So let's stand it up, look at it, and start knocking down the barriers that are going to keep you or I from getting this agreement completed. Now, it all begins and ends, of course, with personal integrity. So you have to, you have to say what you're going to do and do what you say. And as long as you've got people in here in your orbit that are doing that with you, then you can create an agreement because they'll say, I can't have that done by then. Okay, so when can you have that done? And you walk through this thing and it becomes a habitual process by which you say, I'm going to get that done and he's going to get that done so that we can get this done. And so it is crazy, but it keeps me at least from assuming somebody understands what needs to be done next. I can cast a
Yeah.
vision, and to me, it looks crystal clear. But you know, it's it's impossible for there not to be blind spots, and there are more blind spots than I could ever have imagined. To the extent of actually being, he doesn't get this at all,
Mm-hmm.
and so you have to start over, and you have to walk it out. Uh, be willing to do the time to have these conversations where you establish these agreements. Again, I just think that the context
Mm-hmm.
and the framework of an agreement and verbalizing it and using language to describe what you're going to do and then repeating it back is so helpful because it gives him power and her power uh, to accomplish what they want to do. So that's what has come from my previous poor experience, maybe most of all.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the difference between a visionary and, call them implementers, call them the doers, call them the ones that just get things done is, and we need those people. We have to have those people.
100%.
Otherwise, our ideas are never going to happen, ever.
That's exactly right.
But that's the challenge is that we as visionaries can see. I say we can often see the future, like in terms of our world,
Totally.
and see what's
Absolutely.
coming and paint it clear as day, but they don't see what they're supposed to do day
They
one, day
are
two.
not watching the same movie.
Yeah.
And so you have to break it down. And it's really helped me. I can say that.
Yeah, that's a great analogy that we're not watching the same movie. So let's get the script out. That's
Right.
kind of what you're
Right.
doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm really curious, Randy. This is something new that I'm even exploring in my own work and coaching and consulting. I work with a lot of small business owners and their teams. I primarily work with their teams. How much time do you think in your first business you spent kind of doing this visionary, translating your vision with your team versus how much time you actually spend now doing it?
10 to 1. 10 to 1. No kidding.
So give us like what hours. I usually tell people now what I'm seeing, I'm like 50% of your time as a business owner, if you've got people, you need to spend about 50% of your time doing this kind of stuff with your people. And the other 50% you can do,
One,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So absolutely. It's probably more than 50%.
Mm-hmm.
And the closer you can get to maybe 80%, the more you can do nothing on your other 20%. That's the truth of it, because it sets free the final, percentage for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe that if while I'm here and in front of the folks that rely on us for a paycheck and for guidance, they are we're discussing what they're working on and whether or not there's any obstacles to accomplishing it. So, and one of the other things when we was talking about integrity is you can fall out of integrity, right? So once you're out of integrity, you got to do the next right thing, which is to say, I just, I get an email. I got an email this morning from Jonathan, a worker. He says, I am not going to be delivering this thing to you next Friday. This has come up. I can't accomplish it. And he laid out an alternative delivery date, and now he's back in integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody feels great about that because now I know he's not walking around wondering if I'm going to skin him for not delivering on time. And that's so helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So communicate the agreement, communicate it, hear it back from your person that you're making the agreement with, and then work all along the way to remain in integrity. When things come up, get back in integrity. Just say, I can't do it then, and let's know when. And I love that. And as long as you got people who really believe in personal integrity and living under the guidance of that, you're going to do well. You can accomplish so much.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you're listening to They Don't Teach This in Business School. I'm Julie B, and I'm here today with Randy Holland, and we were just talking about how he works with his business, with his team now versus in his first business, and we've been talking about what he calls the agreements. And you mentioned your team, your employees, your staff, knowing when they're out of integrity. I'm curious, Randy, how do you know when you're out of integrity?
Real simple. It's about deliveries on time. Most things are schedule related.
Mm-hmm.
If you start there, you'll figure the rest out. If I'm not going to deliver on time or I'm going to be late for a meeting, one of the things is like if you have meetings that you're expected to be on, don't come in 5 minutes late just because you're the leader. Unless now you can do that if you go to the group and say, look, this is your meeting and I love being here, but because of my schedule, I know that I'm going to be 5 or 10 minutes late often. Is that going to disrupt your meeting? And the longer you live in this environment, the more truth you'll hear, right? They may not tell you the truth initially, which is why I wouldn't try such a thing until you really know the people in the room will trust the agreements framework. But once they do, they'll say, well, maybe you just don't need to come in. We got this. And that's your signal right there. Don't do that. It diminishes. It makes what they're doing seem less important. So there's all kinds of things that you got to check yourself on. But
Yeah.
it's about integrity.
So
Being there.
if for the business owners listening, and if you were going to give them some advice about how to start implementing the agreements framework that you use, what are like one or two, what's kind of the first two, I guess, starting points, if they're not already doing something like that?
There's a Harvard Business Review article online that is sort of I make everybody read. It's about integrity, and
Okay.
I can't think of. Well, I'll get it for you. I'll get you the author, and it breaks it down. It's like a 4-page read. It's simple, but it breaks it down so clearly, and it makes one start to contemplate their existence in the framework of, am I doing things when I say I'll do them? And am I finishing them in the quality level that I've demonstrated or inferred that I would complete it at? And am I doing it on time? Boy, just starting there, it obviously just folds into, okay, we're going to do this and we need to have it done then. Do you see any obstacles to having that happen? Yes, I can't do it because I've committed to complete this and this and this for X, Y, or Z. Okay, so wonder if this is really important, and I wonder if we could go back to those people and ask for a delay, or okay, when can you have it done? But all of these things become, rules of engagement and opportunities for you to really speak through it. And then once you get agreement, okay, so here's what we've agreed to do. We're going to have this delivered, and it's going to be on a PowerPoint, and it's going to be ready, and you're gonna fill it with all the beautiful stuff that you always do, and you're going to have it for me on Friday. And now you tell me what you think, what the objective is, and have him or her say it back,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll add what they think is appropriate. You say, well, yeah, but you don't really probably have to do that. So in other words, you're still fine tuning as you
Yeah.
work through. And then please send me an email just telling me all this.
Yeah.
And it just creates such clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And then there has to be a lot of guidance around the idea that when you've come out of integrity, it's not the end of the world. We know you are an integral person,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to do what's necessary to get back into integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea where I'm not going to finish on time, and here's why, and I have to suggest this alternative delivery date. Will that be okay? And so that's
Yeah.
it's not any more complicated than that.
No, it's do what you say you're going to do, and if something comes up, then you've got to bring that up and say, here's when I can actually get it done, and here's what happened, and just
Right.
communication around what do what you
Exactly.
say you're going to do. I mean, that's really, and if you can't get it
Sounds so
done,
simple.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not simple because we all have. I mean, every
Millions,
human,
everything pulling on your lives,
yeah.
personal, professional,
Mm-hmm.
it's
There's
just crazy.
there's so much stuff that we have to consider. What happens if somebody does not follow, like, first time? Because I'm assuming if they do it more than a couple of times, they're
Yeah, so that
yeah.
becomes a different conversation. Say, look, we tried to get this done and we didn't. And I'm first of all, I want to hear why you think we didn't. And this is about the fourth time this has happened, and I want to know
Mm-hmm.
what you'd say about that. And because if we can't fix this, we can't work together, because everything is based on integrity here,
Yeah.
and you have to do it. And if you can't do it, you can't do it.
Yeah.
So that's how that conversation goes.
And it helps frame the difficult conversations. That's the thing that I'm getting at, I think, is that these upfront conversations, because also, I mean, you're going to have difficult conversations as a business owner, like, with people. It just happens. So you have that conversation up front. So then you have that to go back to when you
100%.
when you
It
do
makes
have
it
it.
much simpler, because
Mm-hmm.
you got a history, you got a kind of a written record
Mm-hmm.
of what's been happening, and you've never. It doesn't have to be hateful
Yeah.
or rough. It's
Yeah.
just, we need this kind of integrity at the company. We all know that we've agreed to it, and if we can't fix it, we got to fix you.
Yeah.
And if we can't fix you, we got to get rid of you.
Well, there you go. Well, Randy, listen, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I do have one more question I want to ask you.
Yeah, sure.
If you were going to teach a class to people who were considering becoming business owners, who were thinking about it, what is the one thing you would really want them to know about business ownership after leaving your class?
I would say that everything occurs or does not occur in direct proportion to your personal integrity.
Mm.
You will get everything you seek to the extent that you do what you say in the manner that you said that you do it in. It's really that simple, and that hard.
Mm-hmm.
Benefits and goodwill will flow to you if you keep your word. And if you speak the truth when it's not convenient,
Mm.
tell bad news when it's time to. That's what I would say, and I don't think there's time given to that in general.
Yeah, those are all very good points to take away from that class, because all of those things happen in business. As a business owner,
Right.
you're at some point going to have you're going to have crossroads where you have to pick easy or right. You're going to have
That's right.
hard conversations. It happens in every single business. So, well, Randy, why don't you tell us about where we can learn more about urban equities and and then we'll wrap up the show here.
Yeah, randyholland.com. You go there and check it out. It's also urbanequities.net, and they go to the same place. You can learn about me and what we're doing. There's two tracks in my environment, you can be a person who, as a result of having a pretty good job, you might have some money to invest, and you don't have to do anything but just participate and have a good earning. We try to never do a deal unless we really believe with all our heart that the investor will get a 70% equity multiple, meaning if you put in $100, you'll get 170 out.
Mm-hmm.
And secretly, between you and me, I really never do a deal unless I believe they'll double their money. But we try, we say a 70% equity multiple
Mm-hmm.
because it's very doable, and we've had great success doing that so far, and we will hope to in the future. So that's our deal.
Well, Randy, thanks again so much for being on the show. It was a great one.
Julie, thank you.
Great
My
conversation. Yeah, I'm happy to have you on the show. And that is it for this episode, but stay tuned because I'll be back soon with more lessons learned on the entrepreneur's journey. I'm Julie B., and they don't teach this in business school.